Welcome back, SmythOS Agents of Change. Now, we are diving into the art of debugging and troubleshooting in SmythOS. Even the most carefully crafted agents can encounter issues. So, knowing how to identify and solve problems is essential. Mike, can you walk us through some common debugging techniques in SmythOS?
I want to go ahead because this is a great example of when just checking things out and making sure that they go the way you want to make sense and works. I think the process that I took earlier, which is export the prod endpoints to Postman, was a great idea. I did that. I imported it. I was actually working on the wrong import. I was working on Training Firestore, just a different one. And then the first thing I did is I went through and I took, I went through first and just tested and to try and make sure. And by the way, when it, Bruno, just a point for you in particular, because I know you asked this question earlier about can I use a particular version? Well, when you're making it as an API call, as opposed to with the agent where you can only choose test or prod, you can actually use or refer to in the API a specific version. Or if you want to just use the latest version, you just remove the version from the URL. So that's a value there. So I now have this in place.
That's a great point about the importance of thorough testing. Mike, can you show us how to use Postman for API testing in SmythOS?
This actually ended up having some JSON embedded inside of it as part of the description. That caused it to have a little problem. So what we needed to do, and so that's what I tested inside of Postman. What that meant is I needed to go back to my API call and change the content type to application JSON. It wasn't great JSON, but it was JSON at the end of the day. That meant that then it required me to rewrite this, rewrite that, and now setting the application type to JSON, which is the piece that I missed when I recreated this on the fly, I apologize, is what gave me what I needed. And now this is working appropriately and returning our file.
That's a great demonstration of how to use debug logs. Mike, what should we do if we encounter content type issues during our API calls?
So now what I need to do is I'm going to replace this agent with, or this component, which would normally be like a large set of components to create a file, etc. With this one, so to do that, I'm going to go ahead and give it the source here. And the other place I needed the source was the URL here. So I'm going to drag that one up there, and then I can go ahead and delete this. And now we should actually have the source indexer working appropriately. Let's make sure I have this. Stop there. Yep. So I have my debug value there. What I'm going to do is go ahead and run this. I'm going to go up to my data sources. I'm going to delete this one just so we can see it. It will delete, I promise. There we go. So now we have no data sources here. And we are going to go ahead and go into our issue expert, and we're going to go ahead and create the data source. So, or add a data source. We're going to go ahead and run it through. And instead of actually using our component, or what would be normally like 5, 10, 15, 20 components, I went ahead and called that API from within that agent, that other agent, in order to perform the same function. This allows me to then use this API call in other places. So I can create a file, a text file quickly and easily in any agent that I want by dragging and dropping in this API call. Or we talked about how with something that's more complex or capable, we would actually use the agent talking to another agent, which would be more appropriate for something like the Asana helper.
That's a common issue many developers face. Mike, can you share us some best practices for debugging complex agents?
And its main job here is to create Asana tickets. And you have to actually know and understand the project names and global IDs and so on. But this allows you to get access to all of the skills that are inside that helper. You just have to pass in or basically build a prompt here to give this agent what it needs so that you can actually execute it as if it were another agent, right? This is a fully fledged separate LLM looking agent. It acts almost, you could think about it, the way I like to look at it, although it's not analogous directly, definitely not technically, this is not a chatbot, but you can kind of think about it in the same way as a chatbot. You're actually using an LLM to actually pull the skills of all the skills of your agent and then use them and then get a response. So in that sense, it feels a lot like a chatbot. Okay. Any questions before we go on with our next lesson? Okay. Does everybody feel like they got a view into the real world of oopsie and fixing things and how you can debug your own problems? Can I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down? No, that was too confusing. Or yeah, that helped me to see, you know, hey, problems occur and I kind of have an idea of how I can actually solve them.
Thank you, Mike, for that real-world perspective on debugging. This has been an invaluable lesson in debugging and troubleshooting in SmythOS. SmythOS enthusiasts, now you have the tools to tackle any issue that arises. Use Postman for thorough API testing. Leverage debug logs to trace issues. Be mindful about content types in your API calls. Approach debugging with a systematic, real-world mindset. And use the SmythOS debug interface wisely, especially in production environments. Remember, effective debugging is not just about fixing errors. It's about understanding your system better and creating more robust agents. In our next video, we'll explore how to turn your SmythOS agents into custom GPTs, taking your SmythOS skills to the next level. Keep debugging, keep improving, and I'll see you in the next one.